I gave my personal driver a raise 15 times, and I haven't replaced him in 7 years. But then he suddenly resigned. That same day, I drove him to the train station myself. But right before we got to the station, he turned back and said something meaningful to me. "Boss, there's something underneath your car." I thought a part was loose, so I stopped by a repair shop to get it checked out. Turns out, the mechanic pulled a black device from the undercarriage, a GPS tracker. The mechanic said the GPS tracker had been on there for at least 6 months. For the past 6 months, my every move was being watched by someone. In those 6 months, 3 of my major deals fell through. Each time, it was like the other party already knew my bottom line. I just thought it was a string of bad luck, but now I finally understand. I parked the car at the station exit and helped old Chen get his old canvas bag out of the trunk. I asked casually, "Is that all you're bringing?" "It's enough. I've got plenty of clothes at home." "There's still 20 minutes. You don't have to wait with me." "You should go." I lit a cigarette. Leaning against the car, I said, "No rush. Let's talk after this." It's been 7 years. Old Chen has been with me for a full 7 years, ever since the company was just starting out with that second-hand Passat. Driving all the way to this brand new Audi A6 we have now. Every time he got a raise, old Chen would say, that's enough, but I kept giving him raises anyway. From the initial 3,500 to the current 12,000, a total of 15 raises. It wasn't me being generous, old Chen was worth that much. In 7 years, old Chen was never late, not even once. He never got into an accident, and never asked a single question he shouldn't have. When I went in to see a client, old Chen would wait in the car. Sometimes he'd wait for 3 or 4 hours, and I never saw him complain. A few vice presidents at the company tried to poach him, offering him more than I was paying. Old Chen turned them all down. That's why I was so surprised when he suddenly said last week that he wanted to quit and go back home. I was stunned for a few seconds. "Is something wrong at home?" Old Chen said casually, "It's nothing. I just feel like going back." I asked him several times. But old Chen just said he was getting old and wanted to retire in his hometown. He's only 52 this year, and he's in great shape. That didn't make sense, so I asked if it was about the salary. Old Chen immediately shook his head and denied it. I didn't press him any further. There's no point in forcing him to stay. Old Chen had worked hard for these 7 years. I flicked the ash from my cigarette. "What are your plans once you get back home?" "Do a little farming, play with my grandkids. After being in the city for so long, you start to miss the countryside. If you need help with anything, just ask. Don't be a stranger." Old Chen paused for a moment. "Mr. Zhang, you've treated me very well. I'll always remember that." I waved my hand dismissively. "You earned it." Old Chen glanced at the time. He said it was time to go in. I stubbed out my cigarette. I was about to see him in when, after a few steps, old Chen suddenly stopped and turned around. His expression was serious. "Mr. Zhang, there's something I have to tell you. There's something under the chassis of your car. You should have someone take it off and look at it." "What is it?" "I can't say for sure, but it's definitely not a factory part." After saying that, old Chen picked up his canvas bag and walked briskly towards the ticket gate without looking back. I stood there, watching his back disappear into the crowd. Something under the chassis? I crouched down and glanced under the car. I couldn't see anything, but old Chen isn't the type to joke around. If he said something, he must have had a reason. I got in the car and drove straight to my usual repair shop. Master Zhang came over to greet me. "Mr. Zhang, what brings you in today? Is there a problem with the car? Help me check the chassis. See if there's anything there that shouldn't be." Master Zhang paused for a moment but didn't ask any more questions. He drove the car onto the lift. 10 minutes later, he emerged from under the car, holding a palm-sized black device in his hand. "Mr. Zhang, when was this installed?" I took it from him and turned it over and over. It had a black plastic casing, and a small indicator light on the side was flashing a faint red light. I don't know much about these things, but my gut told me something was wrong with it. "What is this?" "A GPS tracker. The kind that transmits in real time. As soon as the car moves, the other party can see your location at any time." My grip tightened slightly. Master Zhang examined it carefully for a moment. "This model isn't new. Judging by how it was attached and the amount of dust, it's been on here for at least half a year." "It's been half a year?" My mind started racing. Half a year ago was last November. The company was working on several big projects, and it was from that time on that things started to go wrong, one by one. Last December, I went to the bank to negotiate a 5 million yuan loan. The bank manager had clearly agreed, but he suddenly went back on his word the next day, saying another company had better terms. This February, I went to see an old client. We were about to sign a 2 million yuan order, but the client told me they'd already signed with someone else. Their price was 15% lower than mine. This April, I participated in a bid for a government project. You could say my proposal was flawless, but I still lost in the end. I later heard that the winning bidder's price was exactly 3% lower than mine. At the time, I just thought it was bad luck, or that my competitors were strong. But thinking about it now, before every incident, I had driven to a key location, the bank, the client's office, the bidding center. Someone was tracking my movements, planning ahead, and getting the jump on me. A cold sweat broke out on my back. Master Zhang, can you trace who installed this thing? Master Zhang shook his head. You can buy this kind of device anywhere online. They're untraceable, but to install it under a car, you need access to the vehicle. And you need a bit of time. Not just anyone could do it. I nodded and paid the bill. I got back in the car with the tracker, but I didn't start the engine right away. Instead, I sat in the driver's seat, lit a cigarette, and smoked it slowly. Why didn't old Chen say something sooner? Why did he have to choose the day he resigned? And why tell me in such a cryptic way? If he had found this thing a long time ago, why didn't he just tell me directly, instead of waiting until his departure to leave me with that one sentence? An answer slowly formed in my mind. Old Chen was protecting me. And he was protecting himself, too. If he had exposed it on the spot, the person who planted the GPS would have gotten word of it. They would have likely destroyed the evidence immediately, and maybe even turned the tables on us. But old Chen pretended he knew nothing, waiting until the very last moment before he left to speak up. By then, he'd already be on the train. Even if someone wanted to go after him, they wouldn't be able to. I took a deep drag from my cigarette. Old Chen, in his own way, had handed me a clue. I pulled out my phone and found old Chen's number. I stared at it for a moment, but ultimately put my phone down. Since old Chen chose to tell me at that specific time, he must have had his reasons. Calling him now might just cause trouble for him. I started the car and drove back to the office. On the way, my mind kept replaying the events of the past 6 months. Every failed deal, every client who suddenly backed out, every inexplicable loss. Now, it all made sense. Someone was watching me. Someone was using my movements to plan ahead, stealing my business. And this person was very likely someone close to me. I parked the car downstairs from the office. I didn't rush to go up, but sat in the car instead. I took out my phone and pulled up my schedule for the last 6 months. I was going to check it, item by item. I needed to see exactly who was stabbing me in the back. The light from the phone screen reflected on my face. My expression turned icy. A driver of 7 years could see there was a problem. But I, the boss, had been kept completely in the dark. This was a score that had to be settled. I sat in the car for half an hour, going through every single entry in my phone's calendar. From last November until now, I had negotiated a total of 12 projects. Only 4 of them were successful, a failure rate as high as 67%. And before all this, my success rate had always been above 80%. What was even stranger was that those 8 failed projects all had one thing in common. I had visited the location. The bank loan last December. I drove there 3 times, and each time I was parked in front of the bank for at least an hour. The client order this February. I went to the client's office a week in advance to scope it out. The government tender this April. I went to the bidding center to submit my proposal. I was there for the entire afternoon. If someone was tracking my location with a GPS, they would know what project I was working on, and then make their move first. I opened my contacts and found the number for our company's financial director, Sister Wang. Sister Wang, I need you to check for me. Who ended up taking those projects? Sister Wang sounded a little confused. Boss Zhang, why are you looking into this? It's personal, just check for me, the more detail the better. Alright, I'll put it together for you tomorrow. My tone left no room for argument. I need it tonight. I hung up the phone, went upstairs, and returned to my office. But I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there in the darkness, my mind racing through every single person at the company. The only people who had access to my car, other than Old Chen, were the parking lot security guard, Old Shu. Old Shu has been with the company for 5 years. He doesn't say much usually, and he's a diligent worker. I don't have a strong impression of him. But not a bad one either. Then there's Master Zhang from the repair shop. But Master Zhang and I have worked together for 7 or 8 years, and he's always been reliable. Besides, his reaction just now when he saw the GPS was very natural. It didn't seem like he was faking it. The more I think about it, the more I feel like the problem must be with Lao Shu. But Lao Shu is just a security guard. Why would he install a GPS? Someone must be pulling the strings. Who could it be? A name suddenly flashed in my mind. Zhou Zhizhang. Zhou Zhizhang is the company's vice general manager. He bought a 30% stake 3 years ago. He's in charge of business development. The man is very capable. He's brought a lot of clients to the company. I've always trusted him, but for the last 6 months, Zhou Zhijiang has seemed especially busy, often out of the office, saying he's out drumming up business. I opened my computer and pulled up the company's business records for the past 6 months. The success rate for projects under Zhou Zhijiang was as high as 90%, far exceeding the company average. And the timing of a few big deals he closed was very coincidental, happening right after I lost a deal. Last December, my bank loan wasn't approved. A week later, Zhou Zhijiang negotiated a 3 million equipment purchase. This February, I lost that 2 million order. Half a month later, Zhou Zhijiang signed a similar project. The amount was 1.8 million. This April, I lost a government bid. A month later, Zhou Zhijiang won the bid for another government project. If it happened once or twice, you could call it a coincidence. But for it to happen every single time, that's not normal. I tapped my fingers on the desk. I remembered something. Last November, which was when the GPS was installed, Zhou Zhijiang proposed optimizing the company's vehicle management. He suggested installing tracking systems on all company vehicles, saying it was for easier dispatching. At the time, I thought it made sense, so I agreed. But the matter was dropped later on. Zhou Zhijiang said there was a problem with the equipment supplier and that it was temporarily put on hold. Thinking about it now, when Zhou Zhijiang made that suggestion, could it have been a test? If I agreed to install the trackers, then he could monitor me openly. If I disagreed, he would find another way, like having Lao Shu secretly install one. I opened the company's surveillance system and pulled up the parking lot footage. I needed to see if Lao Shu had spent a long time near my car around last November. The surveillance footage is kept for 1 year, so I could check back to last November. I fast-forwarded the playback, watching it frame by frame. On the evening of November 15th last year, at 7 p.m., Lao Shu was crouched next to my car for nearly 20 minutes. There was hardly anyone else in the parking lot at the time. Lao Shu was at the rear of the car. From the camera's angle, I couldn't see clearly what he was doing, but the length of time was very suspicious. I took a screenshot and continued to look through the footage. From last November until now, Lao Shu has been near my car a total of more than 10 times on his patrol. Each time, he would linger at the rear of the car for a few minutes. A normal patrol wouldn't be like that, unless he was checking something, like the status of the GPS. I saved all these screenshots and then opened Lao Shu's personnel file. Lao Shu is 48 years old, from Henan. He's worked at the company for 5 years, with a salary of 4,500. No disciplinary records. The file says he has a son in college. His family's financial situation is average. I became lost in thought. If Zhou Zhijiang wanted to bribe Lao Shu, the best way would be with money. A security guard who makes 4,500 a month. If someone offered him tens of thousands to plant a GPS, he'd probably agree, but this is all just speculation. There's no proof. Just as I was thinking this, my phone rang. It was Wang Jia. Wang Jia's voice sounded a little hesitant. Mr. Zhang, I found something. Of the 8 projects we lost in the last 6 months, 5 of them ended up going to Mr. Zhou's company. My hand clenched. What? Another company? Wang Jia quickly replied, I just found out myself. Mr. Zhou registered a new company last October, called Huafeng Building Materials. The legal representative is his wife, but he must be the one actually in control. The company's scope of business completely overlaps with ours, and the big contracts they've landed in the past 6 months were all the ones we lost. I closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. Registered the company last October, planted the GPS in November, and started snatching our contracts in December. It was a complete plan. On one hand, Zhou Zhijiang was taking 30% of the stock dividends from my company, while secretly setting up his own. Using a GPS to track my movements, contacting clients in advance, and stealing my business. This isn't just competition. This is betrayal. Wang Jia, don't say a word about this to anyone yet. Email me the information you found. Then, act as if nothing's happened. Understood? After hanging up the phone, I stood up and walked to the window. Down in the parking lot below, Old Shu was on patrol, a flashlight in his hand. He was checking the cars one by one. He walked over to my Audi, stopped, and squatted down. The beam of his flashlight shone underneath the car. A few seconds later, Old Shu stood up and took out his phone. He made a call. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but I could see the nervous, flustered look on his face. I understood. Old Shu had discovered the GPS was gone. He must be calling Zhou Zhijiang right now to report the situation. A cold smile formed on my lips. So what if he found out? I wasn't planning on hiding it anyway. I want Zhou Zhijiang to know that I found the GPS. Then let's see how Zhou Zhijiang reacts. Will he play dumb, confess on his own, or continue the act? No matter which one he chooses, I already have a plan. I went back to my desk and turned on my computer. I started writing a project proposal. It was for a fake project. A $20 million government infrastructure project that required a large supply of building materials. I made the project proposal extremely detailed, including the bidding time, budget allocation, and technical requirements. It looked completely real. I was going to use this fake project to bait Zhou Zhijiang. If Zhou Zhijiang really is monitoring me, then he'll definitely try to snatch this contract. When that happens, the more money Zhou Zhijiang invests, the harder he'll fall. I finished writing the proposal and saved it to my computer's desktop. The file name was High-Tech Zone Infrastructure Project. .docs. Very conspicuous. Then I intentionally left my computer on and walked right out of the office. Zhou Zhijiang's office is right next door. He often comes in after work to borrow my computer for a bit. He'd say his own computer was having problems. I never thought anything of it before. Thinking about it now, he was probably spying on my files. I went downstairs, got in my car, and left the company. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove to the area around the city hall and circled around there for a bit. Then I went to a few building material suppliers. If Zhou Zhijiang is still monitoring me in other ways, these movements will make him even more certain that the 20 million project is real. After doing all that, I finally drove home. It was almost 10 o'clock when I arrived. I took a shower and lay down on the bed. My mind was still a mess. GPS, Old Chen, Zhou Zhijiang, Old Shu, Huafeng Building Materials. These keywords spun in my head like a carousel. My phone vibrated again. It was a message from Young Wang in the IT department. Mr. Zhang, I've found the access logs for the surveillance system. From last November to now, you yourself have logged in 23 times. Mr. Zhou has logged in 47 times. Manager Li logged in 12 times, and I logged in 56 times. Mostly for maintenance. In Mr. Zhou's access records, 31 of them were to view the parking lot surveillance, concentrated between 7 and 9 p.m. 47 times. Zhou Zhijiang, a vice president of sales, checked the surveillance more than twice as much as I did. And the times were concentrated at night. That's the period after I get off work and leave the company. What did he want to see by checking the surveillance? It could only be to confirm what time I left and whether Old Chen made any unusual moves. Or if the GPS had been discovered. I asked Wang again, can you check if Mr. Zhou has downloaded any surveillance footage? Found it. He downloaded 12 video clips, all from the parking lot. The earliest one is from November 16th of last year, and the latest was last Wednesday. November 16th of last year, the day after the GPS was installed. Zhou Zhijiang downloading the footage was most likely to confirm that Old Shu had installed it successfully. Or to see if it had been discovered. I noted this information in my memo app. Then I sent a message to Sister Wang. Help me schedule a meeting with the company's legal counsel, Lawyer Lu, for tomorrow. 10 a.m. in my office. Okay, Mr. Zhang. After that, I turned off the light to sleep. But I barely slept a wink that night. Early the next morning, when I arrived at the company, Old Shu was sweeping the parking lot. When he saw my car pull in, he clearly froze for a moment. Then he lowered his head and continued sweeping, his movements a bit stiff. I rolled down the car window. Old Shu, you've been working hard lately. Old Shu looked up. He forced a smile. Not at all, not at all. Good morning, President Zhang. I deliberately changed the subject. By the way, I think someone tampered with my car last night. The system sent me an alert. Did you see anyone get near my car? A flicker of something crossed Old Shu's eyes, but he quickly returned to normal. No, I didn't notice anything, President Zhang. I got off work at 7 last night and left. Little Zhang was on duty after me. Oh, alright then, never mind. I parked the car and went upstairs. As I passed by Zhou Zhijiang's office, the door was open. He was making tea. When he saw me, he smiled and greeted me. Morning, President Zhang. Working late last night? I saw your car was here until very late. I replied nonchalantly, yeah. Had a project to rush. By the way, Zhijiang, have you heard about the big project over in the high-tech zone? Zhou Zhijiang's eyebrow twitched slightly. What project? Infrastructure in the high-tech zone. They're saying they want to build a new industrial park. The demand for materials will be huge. I wrote up a proposal last night. Later, help me take a look at it and give me some feedback. Sure, just send it to me, President Zhang. I nodded and then went back to my office. At 10 o'clock sharp, Lawyer Lu arrived right on time. I briefly explained the situation to him. The GPS tracker, Zhou Zhijiang registering a related company, stealing our business, and Old Shu's suspicious behavior. After hearing everything, Lawyer Lu's expression was very serious. President Zhang, the nature of these matters is very serious. The GPS tracker involves the crime of illegally obtaining a citizen's personal information. If it's proven that Zhou Zhijiang was behind it, he could be held criminally responsible. In addition, as a senior executive of the company, he used his position to secure business opportunities for a company he controls. This violates the Company Act and the Articles of Association. The company can demand compensation for losses from him, and even reclaim his shares. I said grimly. What I need now is evidence. Right, evidence is exactly what we're lacking right now. Are there any fingerprints on the GPS tracker? Are there any financial transactions between Old Shu and Zhou Zhijiang? Can we prove the chain of interest between Huafeng Building Materials and Chanda Supplies? All of this will take time to investigate. I thought for a moment. I've already removed the GPS tracker. It's in the car. About the fingerprints, can we get someone to analyze them? Yes, I know someone at the Forensic Identification Center. We can send it over to have fingerprints lifted. However, if the person wore gloves, we might not be able to get any. But it's better to try than not to. After Lawyer Lu left, I took the GPS tracker to a repair shop. I asked Master Zhang to help me put it in a sealed bag without disturbing any traces on it. Master Zhang did as I asked. Then I drove to the bank. In the company's name, I applied for a credit report. Not to check the company's credit, but to check Zhou Zhijiang's personal credit. As a company shareholder, he had provided a personal credit authorization letter when he first invested, so I have the right to access his credit records. I wanted to see if he had any other loans or unusual financial transactions under his name. The bank's account manager helped me check. He printed out a report for me. I glanced over it, and discovered something very interesting. This past January, Zhou Zhijiang took out a personal loan of 500,000 from a small loan company for a 1-year term. The stated purpose was personal consumption. A company vice president with an annual income in the millions, why would he need a $500,000 small loan? Unless he had a large expense and didn't want to leave a bank record. This money was most likely the kickback for Old Shu, or it was used as the startup capital for Huafeng Building Materials. After that, I put the credit report away, and drove back to the company. In the afternoon, I deliberately left the Gaoxin District Infrastructure Project .docx file in the shared folder. I set it to read only, but everyone could view it. Then I sent a message in the department group chat. Everyone. I've put the preliminary proposal for the Gaoxin District project on the shared drive. Feel free to take a look when you have time. If you have any suggestions, just let me know. 3 minutes later, the system showed that Zhou Zhijiang had opened the file. 5 minutes later, Zhou Zhijiang knocked on my office door. He walked in, holding a notebook, his expression perfectly natural. President Zhang, I've taken a look at your project proposal. There are a few things I don't quite understand. Go on, I said. The bidding for this project is set for 2 months from now, but according to usual practice, the bidding announcements for government projects are usually released a month and a half in advance. How did you get this information? I smiled. Deputy Director Liu of the Gaoxin District Management Committee is a college classmate of mine. This project is still in the internal planning stage. The official bidding announcement won't be released until next month. I just got the news early. I wanted to start preparing ahead of time. A flicker of something crossed Zhou Zhijiang's eyes. Then he nodded again. I see. So, what are our chances with this project? Deputy Director Liu's take is that, as long as our qualifications are in order and our price is competitive, it's basically ours. This project is huge. If we land it, the company's performance this year could double. Zhou Zhijiang said confidently, then it's definitely worth going all out for. President Zhang, can you let me be in charge of this project? I've handled a few government projects before, so I'm familiar with the process. I sneered inwardly, but my face showed an appreciative expression. Of course, with you leading it, I can rest easy. Flesh out the proposal, especially the part about suppliers. Lock in a few reliable upstream manufacturers in advance. No problem. After Zhou Zhijiang left, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. He took the bait. All I need to do now is make him believe this project is real. Let him pour in resources, manpower, materials, and even his own money. Once he's gone all out to snatch this deal, I'll spring the trap. But a fake project alone isn't enough. I need more evidence to nail him to the wall. I picked up the phone and called our head of finance, Ms. Wang. Ms. Wang, the company's expense reports from the last 6 months. Could you compile them for me? Focus on Zhou Zhijiang and the people under him in his department. Look for any unusual claims, like large entertainment expenses, consulting fees, or service fees. Especially any without proper invoices or with incomplete details. Ms. Wang hesitated. Mr. Zhang, are you? I said calmly, auditing the books. It's a routine audit. Keep it quiet. Understood. With that, she hung up the phone. Then, I thought of someone else. The company receptionist, Xiao Yang. She's a sharp and sensible young woman who's been with us for 2 years. She gets along with people from every department, and she was hired by Zhou Zhijiang. I heard she's also on good terms with Zhou Zhijiang's assistant. I immediately buzzed the intercom. Xiao Yang, could you make me a cup of coffee? Xiao Yang came in shortly with the coffee. I took the cup, and asked casually, Xiao Yang, have you noticed anything unusual with Director Zhou lately? Like frequent visits from strangers? Or him being particularly secretive on the phone with anyone? Xiao Yang froze for a moment. After hesitating for a few seconds, she whispered, Mr. Zhang, there's something. I don't know if I should say it. Go on. I won't tell anyone. Last Friday afternoon, I was working overtime until past 7. As I was leaving, I passed by Director Zhou's office. The door was ajar. I heard him on the phone. He was saying, that old fool still has no idea, so don't worry. Just wait another 2 months. Then we'll buy up the shares for cheap. I was so shocked, I didn't dare listen anymore and just left. My hand holding the coffee cup tightened slightly, but my expression remained unchanged. I see. Don't mention this to anyone. Also, I need you to keep an eye out for me. Pay attention to who Director Zhou meets with, especially people from outside the company. Xiao Yang nodded and left. I put down my coffee cup and took a deep breath. That old fool. He was talking about me. Wait another 2 months. Buy up the shares for cheap. He doesn't just want to steal a contract. He wants to take down the company. Then buy my shares at a low price and make the company completely his. This man's ambition is much greater than I ever imagined. For the next week, I went about my work as usual, at least on the surface, model. But behind the scenes, everything was running like a well-oiled machine. Ms. Wang pulled up the reimbursement records for Zhou Zhang's department from the last 6 months. Among them were 3 large payments for consulting service fees. They caught my eye. Each one was for 50,000. They were paid to 3 different companies, and the invoices were all made out to XX Consulting Center. I had Ms. Wang look up the business registration information for these 3 companies. It turned out 2 of them were already closed down, and the other one was registered to a residential complex. There was no consulting business there at all. I asked Lawyer Liu to help trace where the money from these 3 payments went. By tracking it through the banks, we discovered that after the money was transferred out, it was moved through several accounts and eventually deposited into a personal account. The account holder's name was Xu Daong. Old Xu's full name is Xu Daong. 50,000 yuan. Not too much, not too little. Just enough for a security guard to take a huge risk. Zhou Zhang is clever. He didn't transfer the money directly to old Xu. Instead, he laundered it through 3 shell companies. But what he didn't expect was that I'd follow the paper trail all the way to the source. Now, the GPS tracker, the security camera logs, the reimbursement records, the flow of the funds. All this evidence came together like puzzle pieces, gradually revealing the full picture. Last October, Zhou Zhang registered Huafeng Building Materials, planning to start his own business. In November, he had old Xu install a GPS tracker on my car and use the security system to monitor my whereabouts. Starting in December, he used the information he gathered on my movements to intercept my clients and steal my orders. At the same time, he paid old Xu through the shell companies, a total of 150,000. His ultimate goal was to cause my company's performance to decline. Then acquire my shares on the cheap and take control of the company. It was a meticulously planned, step-by-step scheme. And I played the fool in his game for a whole 6 months. But Zhou Zhang forgot one thing. I built this company with my own 2 hands. From starting from scratch to reaching over 100 million in annual revenue, I've weathered far worse storms than this. He was able to scheme against me only because I trusted him. The moment I stopped trusting him, all his little tricks seemed as laughable as child's play to me. Another week went by. That fake project in the high-tech zone started to develop. Zhou Zhang has been especially busy lately. He's rarely in the office, says he's out visiting suppliers. But I know what he's really busy with is something else entirely. He's contacting all his old connections, getting ready to snatch this contract under the name of Huafeng Building Materials. I had Lawyer Liu help me register a shell company. It's in the name of a friend of mine. I'm using it as bait. Then, I intentionally let it slip in front of Zhou Zhang that we needed to lock in the material suppliers for this project ahead of time. I told him I'd already shortlisted 3 suppliers. Zhou Zhang immediately said, President Zhang, I've contacted a few as well. Their prices are cheaper than the ones you found. Do you want to compare them? I replied, sure, why not? Send me the quote, I'll take a look. The next day, Zhou Zhang sent over a quote. The price on it was 8% lower than what I'd found. That price. At the normal market rate, there's practically no room for profit. But the fact that Zhou Zhang dared to quote it meant he had no intention of actually supplying the goods. He wanted to use a low price to snatch this project. Then he'd either use shoddy materials or just take the money and run. I scoffed. I saved the quote. Meanwhile, I laid another net within the company. I had Xiao Yang secretly gather information on Zhou Zhang's network with other employees. Xiao Yang told me that 3 salesmen in Zhou Zhang's department were very close to him. They often had dinner together after work, and those 3 had exceptionally good sales records over the past 6 months. They'd landed several big deals. I pulled up their sales records. I found that the timing of the projects they landed perfectly coincided with the ones I had lost. In other words, Zhou Zhijiang wasn't just stealing deals by himself. He was bringing his men along to poach the company's clients. They were passing it off as their own work and collecting commissions and bonuses from the company. This was no longer a simple betrayal. This was internal collusion, an inside job. I had Sister Wang pull up their expense reports as well. I found they also had large expenses filed under consulting service fees. The flow of funds was similar to what we found with Old Shu. Except the amounts were even larger. Each of them had over 100,000. Zhou Zhijiang was using company money to pay bonuses to his accomplices. And that money should have been the company's profit. Then, things took an unexpected turn. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. "Excuse me, is this Mr. Zhang?" "Speaking. Who's this?" "I'm from Old Chen's hometown. My surname is Li. Old Chen asked me to give you a message. He said that there's more than one person behind the train station incident. There's a bigger umbrella. That's all he said. He just asked me to pass that along to you." My grip on the phone tightened. "How is Old Chen now?" "He's doing fine. He's farming back home. He said you don't need to look for him. Once this is all over, he'll come find you himself." "All right, I understand. Thank you." I hung up the phone. I sat in my chair, mulling over his words. More than one person, and a bigger umbrella. Old Chen must have discovered more before he quit. He didn't just see the GPS. He probably saw something else. Maybe a meeting between Zhou Zhijiang and some important figure. Or maybe he overheard a conversation he wasn't supposed to. A bigger umbrella. This meant there was someone behind Zhou Zhijiang. Someone more powerful than him. Someone who could influence things at a higher level. Who could it be? I started going through a list of people, both inside and outside the company, who had close ties to Zhou Zhijiang. Clients, suppliers, or maybe someone in a government department. Suddenly, I remembered something. At the end of last year, the company bid on a government project. I was thoroughly prepared, and the proposal was practically perfect. But we still lost in the end. The winning bidder's price was exactly 3% lower than ours. And among the final review experts for that project, there was one with the surname Sun. He was Zhou Zhijiang's university classmate. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought it was just a coincidence. But thinking about it now. And then let his Huafeng Building Materials or an affiliated company win the bid with a precise price. I had lawyer Lu help me look into the evaluation process for that government project. I discovered something unusual. 3 days before the list of evaluation experts was made public, Zhou Zhijiang had a phone call with that expert, Sun. The call lasted for 47 minutes. 47 minutes. That's more than enough time to pass on a lot of information. But this is just speculation. There's no direct evidence. Besides, even if I could prove that Zhou Zhijiang had private contact with the evaluation expert, it would only prove that he broke the rules. It wouldn't prove that he has a bigger umbrella behind him. I needed more information. I decided to go on the offensive. That afternoon, I had the receptionist, Xiao Yang, schedule a dinner with Zhou Zhijiang for that evening. I said I had something important to discuss. Zhou Zhijiang agreed. 7 o'clock that evening, at a Hunan restaurant near the office. I booked a private room. Zhou Zhijiang arrived right on time. He was wearing a dark blue polo shirt and seemed to be in a good mood. He smiled, picked up his teacup, and took a sip. "President Zhang, what's the occasion for inviting me to dinner today?" I poured him a drink. "Zhijiang, we've known each other for 4 years now, haven't we? The company has been able to grow these past few years. And your contribution has been indispensable. You're too kind, President Zhang. I'm just doing my job. Come on, let's have a drink first." We clinked glasses. I put down my glass and looked him in the eye. "Zhijiang, I've been thinking about something lately. I'd like to hear your opinion." "Please, go on. I'm thinking about readjusting the company's shares. You currently hold 30%. I want to give you another 5% in stock options. As a reward for your work these past few years. Also, if you're interested, I'd like to make you the company's general manager. I'll step back into the chairman's position and focus on strategy." Zhou Zhijiang's eyes lit up for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "President Zhang, it's too sudden. I need to think about it." I smiled and said, "No rush. Take your time. Oh, by the way, that project in the high-tech zone, how are things coming along with the suppliers?" "It's pretty much settled. I've already locked in 3 of them. Their prices are all lower than the market rate. Once the project's call for bids is announced, we'll submit our bid immediately. We have a high chance of winning." "That's good. If we can land this project, the company's performance could double this year. When that happens, everyone's shares will be worth a lot." Zhou Zhijiang nodded and clinked glasses with me again. After a few drinks, I deliberately steered the conversation toward personal matters. "Zhijiang, you're from Hunan, right? I remember you mentioned that." "Yes, from Yueyang. The scenery there is beautiful. Are your wife and kids here with you?" My wife is here, my kid is back home studying. I sighed. It's not easy, trying to make it out here on your own. Same here, my wife passed away a long time ago. I've been on my own all these years. Sometimes I wonder, what's the point of making all this money? I don't even have anyone to talk to. Zhou Zhijiang was silent for a moment, then said, President Zhang. Don't say that. This company is your life's work. It's more important than anything. I raised my glass. You're right. Come on, let's have another one. After we had had plenty to drink, I pretended to ask casually, Zhijiang, what do you think is our company's biggest risk right now? Zhou Zhijiang thought for a moment. I think it's the market competition. The building materials industry is tough right now. Prices are transparent, and the profit margins are thin. If we want to grow bigger, we have to differentiate ourselves. I nodded. Differentiation. Well said. Oh, by the way, I heard you've been doing some investing on the side. Did you register a company? Zhou Zhijiang's expression froze instantly. He put down his chopsticks and looked at me, a hint of caution in his eyes. President Zhang, who told you that? It's nothing, just asking. Everyone's registering companies these days. It's normal. Zhou Zhijiang was silent for a few seconds, and then he smiled. Yes, that's right. My wife can't sit still. She insisted on starting a little business, so she registered a company. But it has nothing to do with our business, it's just some small-scale trading. I didn't press him any further and raised my glass. That's great. Come on, let's drink. Zhou Zhijiang raised his glass too. But I noticed his hand was trembling slightly. After that meal, Zhou Zhijiang's actions clearly accelerated. Xiao Yang told me that Zhou Zhijiang had been frequently meeting with people from the outside, sometimes 3 or 4 different groups in one day. She also noticed that while Zhou Zhijiang's assistant was organizing files, a contract accidentally fell out. On it was written, Share Transfer Agreement. I asked Xiao Yang to find a way to get me a copy of that agreement. Xiao Yang hesitated for 2 days, but in the end, she took a few photos for me. The contents of the agreement in the photos sent a chill down my spine. The agreement was a letter of intent. The gist is, Zhou Zhijiang has teamed up with 3 investment firms to acquire the 60% of shares I hold for 30 million. The agreement includes a timeline, complete the acquisition within 2 months, and finalize the business registration change within 3 months. 30 million, to buy 60% of my shares. Based on the company's current valuation, these shares are worth at least 80 million. Zhou Zhijiang wants to kick me out for less than half the price. And as for the 3 investment firms on the agreement, I did some digging. They're all recently registered shell companies. The legal representatives are a man named Wang Jiangguo, a woman named Li Chunhua, and another named Zhao Luan. I had lawyer Lu dig deeper into these 3 and found that Wang Jiangguo is Zhou Zhijiang's older cousin. Li Chunhua is a distant relative of Zhou Zhijiang's wife, and Zhao Luan is the wife of Zhou Zhijiang's university classmate. They're all his cronies. These so-called 3 investment firms are just 3 fronts to hide behind. The last clause of the agreement states that if Party A, me, refuses to sign this agreement, then Party B, Zhou Zhijiang's side, reserves the right to pursue Party A's liability for breach of contract through legal and other means. That line made me scoff. He thinks he has some dirt on me? He thinks he can threaten me with the law? This man isn't just greedy anymore. He's digging his own grave. I decided it was time to close the net. I chose Friday afternoon, right after the company's monthly review meeting. During the meeting, everything proceeded as usual. The departments gave their reports, and Zhou Zhijiang talked about his performance as usual, and I offered a few words of praise as usual. But when the meeting ended, I didn't let everyone leave. Instead, I stood up. Everyone, don't go just yet. I have something to tell you all. The conference room fell silent. All eyes were on me. Zhou Zhijiang was sitting to my right, still holding his notebook. His expression calm. I took a stack of documents out of my briefcase and placed them on the table. For the past 6 months, the company's performance has dropped sharply, especially the success rate of our major projects, falling from 80% down to 67%. I always thought it was due to a tough market, that it was our problem. But recently, I discovered things aren't that simple. Zhou Zhijiang's fingers twitched slightly. Someone planted a GPS tracker on my car to track my movements and intercept my clients and orders ahead of time. That person is right here in this conference room. A low murmur went through the room. The color started to drain from Zhou Zhijiang's face, but he said nothing. At the same time, someone used their position as the company's vice president to register an affiliated company on the side, funneling the company's clients and orders into their own pocket. This person is also in this conference room. I projected a photo of the GPS tracker onto the big screen. This was removed from the chassis of my car. It's been there for at least half a year. I've already sent it for fingerprint analysis. They lifted 2 complete sets of fingerprints from it. One set belongs to the parking lot security guard, Old Shoe. The other belongs to a senior executive at the company. I looked at Zhou Zhijiang. Director Zhou, would you like to see the comparison results between that set of fingerprints and yours? The conference room fell completely silent. All eyes were on Zhou Zhijiang. Zhou Zhijiang's face turned beet red, and his lips trembled slightly. He stood up, his voice quivering slightly. President Zhang, what is the meaning of this? Are you accusing me? I asked calmly. It's not an accusation, it's a confirmation. Zhou Zhijiang, last October you registered Huafeng Building Materials. The legal representative is your wife. In November, you instructed the security guard, Old Shu, to install a GPS on my car. Starting in December, you used the information from that GPS to intercept and steal my clients. Within 6 months, you stole 5 out of 8 projects, with a total value of over 12 million. At the same time, you paid Old Shu a bonus of 150,000 through a shell company. You also paid your 3 salesmen a total of 400,000 in kickbacks. All of this money was reimbursed from the company's accounts as consulting service fees. I laid out the stack of documents on the table, one by one. This is the GPS and fingerprint analysis report. These are the surveillance system access logs, showing you viewed the parking lot footage 47 times. These are Old Shu's bank statements, showing a transfer of 150,000 from the shell company you control. These are the expense reports for your 3 salesmen and the corresponding flow of funds. And these are the corporate registration files for Huafeng Building Materials and Chindao Materials. This is the letter of intent for a stock acquisition you signed with your cousin's shell company. With every document I produced, Zhou Zhijiang's face grew a shade paler. Zhou Zhijiang, do you have anything else to say? Zhou Zhijiang stood frozen. His lips trembled for a long moment before he finally managed to squeeze out a few words. President Zhang, please, let me explain. I cut him off. Explain what? Explain why you put a GPS tracker on my car. Or explain why you wanted to buy my 60% stake for 30 million? The conference room erupted into chaos. The vice presidents all stared at each other in shock. The managers from the sales department started whispering among themselves. Zhou Zhijiang's assistant stood up, as if to say something, but then sat back down. But then, Zhou Zhijiang suddenly laughed. It was an ugly laugh. President Zhang, do you really think any of this can touch me? Let me tell you, all of your so-called evidence is forged. You have no right to check my bank statements. You have no right to pull my credit report. This is an invasion of privacy. I'm going to sue you. I replied scornfully, go ahead. Feel free to sue me. I've already submitted all the evidence to the Economic Crimes Division. You're under suspicion for the crime of illegally obtaining personal information, embezzlement, and contract fraud. The officers from the Economic Crimes Division are downstairs right now. Why don't you go and tell them yourself? Hearing this, the color drained completely from Zhou Zhijiang's face. He spun around and made a break for the door. But the conference room door was pushed open from the outside, and 2 uniformed police officers walked in. Zhou Zhijiang, we're from the Economic Crimes Division. You're a suspect in multiple economic crimes. Please come with us to assist in the investigation. As if all the strength had been drained from his body, Zhou Zhijiang collapsed into his chair. His assistant rushed forward to try and stop them, but the police held him back. Zhou Zhijiang looked at me, his eyes red. President Zhang, I was wrong. Let me go, and I'll give you all my shares. I'll return all the money. Just let me off the hook. I said nothing as the police led Zhou Zhijiang away. The conference room was dead silent. I glanced at everyone in the room. My voice wasn't loud, but every single word was clear. To everyone present, if any of you have done anything to betray this company, stand up and say so now, and I can go easy on you. But if I have to find out for myself, don't blame me for what comes next. After a few seconds of silence, a manager from the business department stood up. With his head down, he said, President Zhang, I took kickbacks from President Zhou on 2 occasions. It was a total of 30,000. I'll pay it all back. Another person stood up. I took some, too. The third one to stand up was Zhou Zhijiang's assistant. President Zhang, President Zhou told me to destroy some documents, but I didn't. I kept all of them. I'm coming forward on my own. I nodded. Good. Pay the money back. Write a self-criticism report. Those who deserve to be fired will be fired. And those who deserve a demotion will get one. I won't pursue criminal charges against you. But company rules can't be broken. The men nodded again and again. They looked relieved, as if a great weight had been lifted. On the 3rd day after Zhou Zhijiang was taken away, Old Shu was also summoned. He confessed to everything during his interrogation. Zhou Zhijiang had given him 150,000 to install a GPS tracker. He was also told to check that the device was working properly once a week. Old Shu said he didn't know it was illegal. He thought it was just an ordinary tracking device. But the law doesn't care if you're ignorant. The whole affair with Zhou Zhijiang sent a huge shockwave through the company. I spent an entire week handling the aftermath, recovering the siphoned funds, mending client relationships, and restructuring the management team. Fortunately, most of the clients were understanding once they learned the truth. A few even proactively came back to renew their contracts with me. The accounts for Huafeng Building Materials and Qingda Logistics were frozen. Zhou Zhijiang's assets under his name were also seized. According to the Economic Crimes Division's initial audit, Zhou Zhijiang had illegally profited over 6 million through embezzlement and contract fraud. Including the letter of intent for his attempt to acquire my shares at a low price, the total amount involved in the case exceeded 30 million. According to criminal law, he'll be behind bars for at least 7 or 8 years. As for Old Shu and the 3 employees, because the amounts involved were smaller and they had confessed, they were given fines and probation. Slowly, the company returned to normal. But there was still one thing bothering me, something Old Chen had said. It's not just one person behind this. There's a much bigger umbrella. Zhou Zhijiang was already caught, and he didn't mention anyone else in his confession. Could the bigger umbrella not refer to the person backing Zhou Zhijiang, but mean something else entirely? I didn't find out the answer until a month later. That day, I received a package. The return address was a village in Lao Chen's hometown. I opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph and a note. The photo was of my company's main entrance, taken on a night in October of last year. There were 2 people in the photo. One of them was Zhou Zhijiang. The other person's face was hidden in the shadows, so I couldn't see who it was. But from their build and clothes, I felt like I had seen that person somewhere before. There was only one line on the note, written in Lao Chen's handwriting. President Zhang, you should know this person. He's one of your own. I stared at the photo for a long time. I was trying to identify the person in the shadows when suddenly, a thought struck me like lightning. That person's posture, that dark gray jacket, that watch. I shot up to my feet, the blood rushing to my head. That person was Manager Li, the manager of the administration department. The Manager Li that I had promoted myself. He had been with me for 6 years, in charge of the company's administration and logistics. He managed the parking lot security. He managed the company's surveillance system. He managed the vehicle fleet's dispatch. If he was in league with Zhou Zhijiang, then so many things would finally make sense. Why Zhou Zhijiang could access the surveillance footage so easily. Why no one noticed when Lao Shu installed the GPS, and why Zhou Zhijiang could operate so brazenly in the company for so long. Manager Li, he was the one providing the cover. I didn't let on that I knew. Instead, I had lawyer Guy secretly investigate Manager Li. A week later, the results came in Manager Li's bank account. Over the past 6 months, he had received multiple transfers from a shell company controlled by Zhou Zhijiang, totaling 280,000. He was Zhou Zhijiang's partner inside the company. I sat in my office, staring at the investigation report, unable to speak for a long time. 6 years. This man had been with me for 6 years. I promoted him from a regular employee to manager. His salary tripled. His year-end bonuses were never short. I thought he was loyal, that he was dependable, that he treated the company like his home. And what was the result? He schemed against me with an outsider. I picked up the phone and dialed Manager Li's extension. Manager Li, come to my office. When Manager Li walked in, his expression was perfectly normal. He even smiled and asked me, President Zhang, you wanted to see me? I told him to sit down. I pushed the investigation report in front of him. Take a look at this. He glanced down, and the smile on his face slowly disappeared. His hands started to tremble, and his lips turned pale. President Zhang, I can explain this. Alright, then I'll give you a chance to explain. Something happened with my family. I was in desperate need of money. President Zhou said he could help me, I just helped him out a few times, but I had no idea he was planning to do those things. I thought he just wanted to understand the company's operations. I stared into his eyes. You didn't know? You're in charge of the surveillance system. Zhou Zhijiang accessed the parking lot footage 47 times. You never thought that was a problem? You're in charge of security for the parking lot. Old Shu installed a GPS tracker on my car. And you never noticed? Are you blind, or just stupid? Manager Li's mouth fell open, but no words came out. You took 280,000 from Zhou Zhijiang to pave the way for him in this company. Surveillance, vehicles, personnel scheduling. You opened every single back door for him. Without you, it would have been impossible for him to hide in the company this long. President Zhang, I swear I didn't know he was coming after you. I cut him off. I'll give you 2 choices. First, you return the 280,000 in full. Resign on your own, and I won't press criminal charges. Second, I hand over the evidence to the Economic Crimes Division. You can go join Zhou Zhijiang inside. You choose. Manager Li slumped into his chair, tears streaming down his face. President Zhang, I've been with you for 6 years. Just spare me this one time. I let out a cold laugh. 6 years. When you were betraying me. Did you ever think about those 6 years? He fell silent. I'll give you 1 day to think about it. By this time tomorrow, I want to see your resignation letter and proof of the 280,000 refund. Otherwise, you know the consequences. After Manager Lee left, I stood by the window, looking down at the parking lot below. Old Shu's post had already been filled by someone new. The new security guard was on patrol. Everything looked the same as before, but I knew that many things were already different. Trust is something that, once it's shattered, can never be pieced back together. 3 months later, the dust had finally settled. Zhou Zhijiang was sentenced to 7 years in prison, and all his personal assets were confiscated. Manager Lee resigned, returned the money, and didn't face criminal charges. But in this industry, he would never find work again. Old Shu was given a suspended sentence and went back to his hometown. Those 3 salesmen were fired, and their reputations in this circle were ruined. The company's business returned to normal, and was even doing better than before. That's because I spent 3 months personally visiting every single one of our clients again. I explained the situation honestly, and most of them were moved by my candor. Not only did we not lose any of them, but they even introduced us to new clients. As for that fake project in the high-tech zone, although it never actually materialized, after I dealt with the internal issues through a college classmate, I actually managed to land an order for another project in the high-tech zone. The contract was worth 15 million. You could say it was a blessing in disguise. The morale at the company also stabilized. As for the people who stayed, they actually grew more united after the whole ordeal. Because they knew their boss wouldn't fail anyone who was loyal to him. And that he wouldn't let traitors get away with it. That autumn, I drove to Lao Chen's hometown. It was a tiny village, tucked away in the mountains of Hunan. I followed the address Lao Chen had given me, and found his home, a small, 2-story house. There were a few orange trees planted by the entrance, and rice grains were drying in the yard. Lao Chen was in the yard, shucking corn. When he saw my car pull up to the gate, he smiled. "Mr. Zhang, what brings you here?" I got out of the car and took 2 cases of liquor, a box of tea, and a carton of fine cigarettes out of the trunk. "I came to see you," I said, "and to thank you while I'm at it." Lao Chen stood up, dusted himself off, and ushered me into the house. His wife brought us tea and peanuts, then tactfully excused herself to the kitchen. We sat down in the main room. Lao Chen was the same as ever. A man of few words, but with a sharp look in his eyes. "Lao Chen, let me ask you something. That GPS tracker, when did you find it?" Lao Chen picked up his teacup and took a sip. He said slowly, "Last October. I was washing your car one time and saw it when I got down to clean the undercarriage. I didn't know what it was at the time. I looked it up online later. And that's when I realized it was a tracking device. Then why didn't you tell me sooner?" Lao Chen put down his teacup and gave me a look. "Mr. Zhang, you're a smart man. But sometimes you're too trusting of those around you. If I had told you then, you would have blown up right then and there. It would have tipped them off. The person who planted that tracker definitely had bigger plans. I had to help you find out who it was, but without letting them know that I was onto them. So you pretended you didn't know, and just watched secretly." Lao Chen nodded. "I watched for 3 months. I noticed Mr. Zhou would often go to the parking garage after you left to whisper with Lao Shu. I also found out that Manager Lee gave Mr. Zhou access to the security cameras. That's when I knew this wasn't a one-man job." "Then how did you know for sure it was Zhou Zhijiang?" "There was one time, at the end of last year, you went to the bank to talk about a loan. Mr. Zhou was at the office that day, but not long after you left. He left too. I secretly followed him for a little way. I saw him go into a coffee shop near the bank and sit with a man in a suit for half an hour. After that, when your loan application was rejected, I knew something wasn't right." I was silent. All these things Lao Chen was telling me, I had absolutely no idea about. "Then why didn't you tell me sooner? You could have at least told me before you left." Lao Chen just smiled. "Mr. Zhang, I'm your driver. I'm not your detective. Telling you about the GPS was just me doing my duty. The rest, you have to investigate yourself. What you find is what you can call evidence. What I told you is just hearsay." I picked up my teacup and didn't speak for a long time. 7 years. I thought I knew old Chen well, but now I realize I only knew the side he was willing to let me see. This seemingly ordinary driver was much more thoughtful than I had ever imagined. I thought for a moment and said, "Old Chen, come on back. I'll double your salary, and you can pick any position you want." Old Chen shook his head and smiled. "CEO Zhang, I'm 52 this year. I don't want to struggle anymore. Staying at home, doing some farming, and looking after my grandson is pretty good. Then you have to let me do something for you. You've helped me out so much. I can't just let it go like this." Old Chen thought for a moment and said, "If you really want to thank me, then help me fix the road at the entrance of our village. There are a lot of elderly people in the village, and the road is hard to walk on." I was stunned for a moment, then I smiled. "I'll arrange it as soon as I get back." On the road back, I was driving my car slowly along the mountain highway. The scenery outside the window was beautiful. The autumn mountains were painted gold and deep red. My phone rang. It was Sister Wang. CEO Zhang, what are your plans for next month's board meeting? We'll proceed as usual. Oh, right. Help me prepare a stock incentive plan. I want to give some stock options to a few of our long-term employees. Okay, which ones? I thought for a moment and said a few names. Finally, I said, add one more. Chen Guodong, even though he has already resigned. His 7 years of service are worth this much. Sister Wang was stunned for a second. Master Chen? He's not with the company anymore. I know, but keep these stock options for him. Whenever he wants to come back, or if he wants to transfer them. That's fine. Understood. After hanging up, I continued to drive. The mountain road was winding, but I knew. The road ahead was straight. Those 3 salespeople were fired. And their reputations in this industry were ruined. The company's business returned to normal levels. Even better than before, because I spent 3 months visiting every single client again and honestly explaining the situation. Most of the clients were moved by my honesty. Not only did we not lose them, but they also referred new clients to us. As for that one in the high-tech zone, the fake project, although it never actually materialized. But after I handled the internal issues through a university classmate of mine, I actually managed to get an order for another project in the high-tech zone, worth 15 million. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise, and morale at the company stabilized. The people who stayed, after going through this whole ordeal, actually became even more united. Because they knew that this boss wouldn't mistreat those who are loyal, and wouldn't let those who betray him off the hook. That autumn, I drove to Lao Chen's hometown. It was a tiny village tucked away in the mountains of Hunan. Following the address Lao Chen gave me, I found his home. It was a small 2-story house with a few orange trees planted by the entrance. Rice was drying in the yard, and Lao Chen was there, shucking corn. When he saw my car stop at the gate, he paused for a second. Then smiled. Boss Zhang, what brings you here? I got out of the car and pulled 2 cases of liquor, a box of tea, and a carton of good cigarettes from the trunk. I came to see you, I said, and to thank you. Lao Chen stood up, dusted himself off, and invited me into the house. His wife brought us tea and peanuts, then discreetly excused herself to the kitchen. We sat down in the main hall. Lao Chen was his usual self. A man of few words, but with very sharp eyes. Lao Chen, I want to ask you something. That GPS tracker, when did you find it? Lao Chen picked up his teacup and took a sip. He said slowly, last October. I saw it once when I was washing your car, while I was down wiping the chassis. I didn't know what it was at the time. Later, I looked it up online, and realized it was a tracking device. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? Lao Chen put down his teacup and looked at me. Boss Zhang, you're a smart man. But sometimes you're too trusting of the people around you. If I had told you then, it would have tipped them off. The person who planted the tracker must have had a bigger scheme in mind. I had to help you figure out who it was, but without letting them know that I was onto them. So you just played dumb and watched from the shadows. Lao Chen nodded. I watched for 3 months. I noticed Boss Joe would often go to the parking lot right after you left. He'd be whispering with Lao Shu. I also discovered that Manager Li gave Boss Joe access to the security cameras. That's when I knew it wasn't just one person involved. So how did you confirm it was Zhou Zhizheng? There was this one time, at the end of last year. You went to the bank to negotiate a loan. Boss Joe was at the office that day, too. But not long after you left, he headed out as well. I secretly followed him for a short distance and saw him go into a cafe near the bank. He sat with a man in a suit for half an hour. Afterwards, your loan didn't get approved. That's when I felt something was off. I was silent. I had no idea about any of the things Lao Chen was telling me. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? You could have at least told me before you left. Old Chen chuckled and said, Mr. Zhang, I'm your driver, not your detective. I've already done my part by telling you about the GPS. The rest is up to you to investigate. What you find out for yourself is what you can call evidence. What I would have told you, that's just gossip. I picked up my teacup and was silent for a long time. For 7 years, I thought I knew old Chen so well. But now I realize I only knew the side of him he wanted me to see. There was much more to this seemingly ordinary driver than I thought. After a moment of thought, I said, Old Chen, come back to work for me. I'll double your salary. You can have any position you want. But Old Chen just shook his head and smiled. Mr. Zhang, I'm 52 years old this year. I don't want to hustle anymore. I'd rather just be at home, do some farming, and look after my grandkids. It's a good life. But you have to let me do something for you. You've helped me out so much. I can't just leave it at that. Old Chen thought for a moment and said, if you really want to thank me, you can help fix the road at the entrance to my village. There are a lot of elderly people in the village, and the road is hard for them to walk on. It gets all muddy when it rains. I was stunned for a moment. Then I smiled. All right, I'll arrange it as soon as I get back. On the drive back, I drove slowly along the mountain road. The scenery outside was beautiful. The autumn mountains were painted in shades of gold and deep red. My phone rang. It was Ms. Wang. Mr. Zhang, do you have any plans for next month's board meeting? It will proceed as scheduled. Oh, by the way, help me prepare a stock incentive plan. I want to grant some options to a few long-time employees. Okay, which ones? I thought for a moment, then listed a few names. Finally, I said, and add one more. Chen Guodong, even though he's already resigned. His 7 years of service have earned him this. Ms. Wang was taken aback for a moment. Master Chen? But he's not with the company anymore. I know, but save these options for him. Whenever he decides to come back, or if he wants to transfer them. Either is fine. Understood. After hanging up, I kept driving. The mountain road was winding, but I knew